Coming up on In the Life, living on the margins in a tough economy.
Where am I eating? Where am I sleeping? Where am I going to get resources and services?
A conversation with philanthropist Thai Pham and activist Rickke Mananzala.
And you know what? I can't just sit down and watch, or sit back and watch our community fall deeper into crisis.
And Habitat for Humanity's first ever LGBT Unity Build Day.
It's very exciting to work with the people that are actually going to be living in these spaces.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and these funders. And by the annual support of In the Life members like you.
Tonight on In the Life, documenting the people and issues shaping the gay experience, an unseen view from the front lines, community groups advocating for racial and economic justice. In the year that marks the 40th anniversary of the Stonewall uprising, the LGBT movement is more visible than ever. It has made remarkable gains in 4 decades, yet as gays aspire to be mainstream, many LGBT people have been left behind. Queer people who do not conform to an ideal of gender, race, and class fall outside of the economic norm and are largely invisible to the movement. A recent report from the Williams Institute at UCLA reinforces the fact that a sizable number of lesbians and gays are likely to be poor. Next, how LGBT people living on the economic margins of our society organize themselves to find housing, obtain better skills, employment, and health care.
I live check to check. I don't have health insurance. I recently had to go to an emergency room and I have a bill over $1,000 that I don't know how I'm gonna take care of, you know.
I got laid off and the person that I was living with asked me to leave. Twice they've been, I guess, threatened to get my electricity off. This is in the middle of the winter.
Right now I'm unemployed and I've been looking for 14 months. So I was living off of unemployment. But that's gone. And so now I'm struggling out there, trying to keep my place and trying to keep a roof over my head.
To work hard, and once you pay this bill, once you pay that, once you do that, and it's like the checks you work for, you still ain't got enough.
People's lives are actually at stake in the economic crisis. We see people not receiving health care, people actually dying. We see the numbers of homeless people rising dramatically across the country.
Where am I eating? Where am I sleeping? Where am I going to get resources and services?
There is no research about LGBT poverty. It's so hard to come up with data about LGBT anything, right? Because not everybody self-identifies, because a lot of people conducting surveys don't think to include us, for many reasons.
One of the reasons why, gay, lesbian, bisexual, or a transgender person are more likely to be poor than, say, straight people. So we still have about half of the states in the US where it's still legal for an LGBT person to be fired from their job without recourse. Some of it is just discrimination, that exists that's both based on race, class, and gender.
It's a hard market to find a job today, but if you're, openly gay, transgender, or butch, people sometimes don't want to give you a job based on how you look.
I'll fill out an application, I'll drop it off, everything is cool. But when I get called for an interview, when I come in is when everything gets all topsy-turvy, doesn't work out, because I'm good on paper, the resume is fabulous, but to them the person is not what they're looking for, so the job is automatically filled.
There's been jobs where I've been working and the boss didn't know. And he had once came up to me, oh, I didn't know, but I hear that you're not a female. I'm okay for now, but if it caused any kind of attention or something, I'm gonna have to let you go.
When a transgender member of Globe, Make the Road, was denied employment at a local business for being transgender, the group decided to start an investigation to document how often this in fact happens.
We pair people, so we had one female and a transgender individual.
It was me partnering up with another female, biological female.
We did a series of workshops and a series of trainings with them on how to interview, make sure that the dressing was appropriate and that they basically was like sending twins out.
We have basically the same work experience, but all the names was changed up and stuff. And we would go to the same jobs and apply.
They went through the whole process of interviewing. Turns out that the transgenders were not hired or even called back. And as for the straight ones, they were called back for interviews and they were hired.
Trans and gender nonconforming people are affected by economic barriers in their lives because of discrimination in a lot of very different ways.
When trans and gender nonconforming people try to access their assistance, folks face incredible discrimination and harassment.
I'm in the waiting room, Mr. White, and I'd be like, so when I go up there, I'm like, and then she says my whole name, and I'd be like, that's me. She said, well, you don't need welfare. You need SSI. And I'm like, excuse me, because any man that want to live like a female is crazy in my book. And I'm just like, whoa, okay. What do I do? Do I get up or do I act ignorant? Or do I just sit here and just get the paperwork?
We know that 60% of people who have gone into the welfare office have faced discrimination in one form or another. Whether it's no, you're not allowed in this building, or no, we're not going to help you today, come back tomorrow looking like a man, or come back tomorrow looking like a woman.
Because of the high rates of homelessness and unemployment, folks really rely on public assistance and welfare to survive. Like, it's really about folks being able to have access to food, access to health care, access to housing, and access to other services.
We have worked with Audre Lorde Project, Housing Works, Queers for Economic Justice, a lot of other organizations in the city to advocate within the Human Resources Administration to really train the workers to know what kind of barriers transgender people might face and how to properly address them.
Basically pushing them to give trans and gender non-conforming communities basic respect and clear access to service.
Homeless in New York, and to be living in a shelter is to be as isolated as you can be from whatever community you are connected to. And for queer folks, who are in the shelter, there is no connection to a movement or a community.
From my own experience, when I was in the system, right? Sitting in a group of women with a case manager next to me saying, and all the women were talking about their boyfriends, their husbands, their fellas, their guys, this, all men. And I started talking about my partner, right, Sheila, and the case manager sitting next to me went like that and literally put her hand in front of my face and told me, I can't talk about that. I need to go upstairs and talk one-on-one with my case manager.
We were seeing a tremendous amount of harassment, violence, discrimination, rape, murder happening to trans people in shelters that didn't match their gender identity.
I was out gay man shelter. I've been in the shelter almost about a year. People said things, call it different faggot names and all that.
The city always says, and they still say, there is no violence in their shelters. Trust me, there's violence in those shelters.
We worked with 3 other organizations in New York City for 2 years to fight with the city about this and try and educate the Department for Homeless Services.
The ongoing work that we continue to do is to reach out to the community and let them know you have these rights, you have access to the shelter system, ask for your rights, like you have a policy in place.
It's creating safety when you change a policy that says, well, actually I'm going to select the shelter that's safe for me. That's creating safety. And it helps other people believe that they have the power to do something like that too.
Racial and economic justice is definitely a queer issue. We are one of the most marginalized populations and are left out of many conversations and many decisions that are made that affect our lives.
There's a lot of grassroots energy around the country. I think a lot of queer people are more progressive, further to the left than is reflected by our national organizations.
Our country is changing, and the demographics of the United States will soon be much different than they have been over the last several decades. And the movement's continued ignorance around racial and economic justice issues is only going to compound a problem that already exists. As people of color, we need to see ourselves reflected in the organizations that are supposed to be serving them, like the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, like the Human Rights Campaign, like other national organizations.
We really need to build a queer LGBT movement that really focuses on those at the bottom, the folks with the less resources, the folks that are facing multiple levels of discrimination based on race, based on their gender identity, based on their economic access.
I think this is where collective cooperation, comes to mind, that we can create situations to help one another.
Show me what the leaders say. Maybe we should write a letter. Said, dear Mr. Man.
Right here, 40 years ago, our people, trans women, women of color, sex workers, our people, gay people, lesbians, took the city back. We said no more violence for our community. And we're continuing that legacy, that resistance to economic violence, that resistance to the welfare system, to the shelter system, because this is our city. We create their city. We're not just, victims. We're creating safety with each other. So we make it for ourselves. We create it with each other. And that's what we're here to say.
Thai Pham is a director at Stonewall Community Foundation, which began in the early 90s during the AIDS crisis as a collection of funds to ensure that LGBT people had a place to designate their legacy. Ricke Mananzala is the executive director of FIERCE, an organization founded on the principle that LGBTQ youth of color must realize and manifest their own social and political power. Join Stonewall's Thai Pham and Ricke Mananzala of FIERCE as they discuss economic activism and the synergy of their organizations.
We talk so much about what's going on in the mainstream movement right now with Prop 8, with marriage, and I think what we kind of forget is behind all this are other issues that are affecting community members beyond marriage. For example, what is it like to be biracial, to be trans, to deal with xenophobia and homophobia and transphobia as well. We sent out a survey to about 50 LGBT people of color organizations in New York City. And the common theme, everyone who came back, they said, we don't have enough money. We need support. Right. We need you guys to leverage your resources to help us.
That story isn't even unique to New York City. I think, and in a number of other locations across this, across this country, LGBT people of color organizations are struggling financially, and in their communities. Overall, the communities are struggling still with health crisis, housing crisis. Right. Unemployment rates are going up in our communities, of course, in general across the United States, but disproportionately in our communities, people of color communities, low-income communities, and young people in particular. The young people FIERCE works with right now are experiencing unemployment rates more so than we've ever seen in a long time. And so the fact that these organizations are on the ground, in the communities, deeply connected to families, young people, some of the most dynamic on-the-ground organizing that's happening across the country is happening in local communities, not just at the national level. A majority of LGBT people of color organizations that exist that are underfunded are the ones that are actually the most connected to the communities that we all want to serve. How does Stonewall Community Foundation see itself as a part of a bigger movement? Where's your place in the movement?
We see ourselves as the resource and the funders for the movement. We strive so hard to bring everyone together and to make sure that, you know, Fierce knows the work that Hedrick Martin's doing, or even Green Chimneys, and how does one relate to the other, and how can Stonewall be there and be like a catalyst? You know, let's say, for example, Fierce, you know, a donor might come and say, hey, you know, we're interested in funding youth programs. Like, that's great, but you know what Fierce also does? They are an education, community, and empowerment program as well. And your friends who are interested in that, come on board. Let us. We're matchmakers at the end of the day.
Is that what it's about, a dating game?
It's about a dating because we keep it real like that. You know,
that's right.
I think what I'm really proud of and really excited is the work that Stonewall is doing around getting more young professionals involved in philanthropy. And about 3 years ago, we started this initiative called the Quarter Share Program. Because realistically, if you don't learn philanthropy at home, if you don't learn it at school, where do you learn it? Where do you get the value that is important to give back, that is important to support the community that has given you so much? I was thinking, well, you know what? How can I get my friends involved? I think, you know, we're, you know, in our late 20s, early 30s, and just moving into our own career-wise. You know, a lot of us didn't have the money, and you think of the term, you know, philanthropist, and you think of Warren Buffett or Bill Gates. Someone can write, you know, a check for $1 million here, $1 million there. Why do we always think that you have to be wealthy to make a difference? And I said, you know what? Why don't I apply it to myself? How can I give back to the community? And I was thinking, you know, I pay a gym membership, you know, $85 a month is taken out of my debit. I don't think about it. It's just part of what happens. Like, why can't we apply the same model to philanthropy? So I was thinking, you know, how about I get a bunch of people together, we all contribute $25 a month to Stonewall Community Foundation, and then raise that money at the end of the year, do something really good about it. So we thought about how can we make this educational and fun for this group of members. And we came up with the name of Quarter Share. If I said it's very New York-centric in the sense that a quarter share is what a share on Fire Island. I think it's every fourth weekend. And so we apply the concept, well, how about we give 75% of that money goes to Stonewall's general work, and the remaining 25% goes to an organization that we choose. And this year, I'm proud to say, we're up at 175 members. Wow. Despite being a recession, despite knowing that, you know, some of these people are getting laid off, and they're still so committed to the cause. So we're very excited and see who's going to come up this year as a grantee. Thinking about who actually gives now, it's not just wealthy people. In fact, the statistics show that actually low-income people and moderate-income people are giving a larger percentage of their income to organizations. How did you get involved with Fierce? So Fierce was founded in 2000. I was 16 in 1995. My parents found out that I was queer, and I lost their support. And what that meant for me was I faced a lot of challenges similar to the ones that Fierce members face today, which is having to navigate things that I shouldn't have to navigate by myself, whether that's trying to get into school, or having to get a job really young, or having to do a lot of things by myself that were really difficult without financial support and without emotional support. And I think had I had an organization like Fierce that was gonna expose me to other young people facing similar challenges, would have helped me feel less isolated. But more than that, would have provided me a vehicle to channel my anger, to channel my sadness, and to channel really the outrage that I felt, not just about my parents not supporting me, but then the challenges that I faced because I didn't have that support. Now, Ricke, I love the name of the organization, by the way. I think it is fabulous. I think it's wonderful. I think It's a declaration.
So what it stands for is Fabulous, Independent, Educated Radicals for Community Empowerment.
Excellent.
Now, no way is there gay or lesbian in the acronym, but fabulous is clearly the stand-in for what that means in our community. In 1999, a number of the young people who then went on to found Fierce as an organization a year later, they were all involved in a service organization. They were there as clients, seeking services, being involved in programming that was really important. And they were looking around the table and being like, oh, you're homeless? Oh, you got harassed by the cops? Or have you been hanging out at the pier? Have they been bothering you down there? Or did you know the pier is about to get fenced off? They're about to make it this world-class park. Or, oh, your parents said this and that to you, or you left school because it's not safe. They're around the table being like, wow, it's good to not feel isolated, right. That I'm meeting other people who are experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing. And that, at the time, was almost enough. It was like, wow, I'm breaking isolation, and that step was important. But then they were like, you know what? We're collectively facing all these really serious problems, and yet there's no organization for us to actually identify our solutions to our problems for ourselves. Certainly people can do it on our behalf, and those organizations are important, but they founded Fierce as the only political organization by and for LGBTQ youth of color in the city. You know, I think that's what we want to be remembered for, and I think this kind of synergy between Fierce and Stonewall is that, you know, your donors, the people involved in Stonewall, the people who care about our community, part of their legacy is in being remembered for the choices they make with what they leave behind in resources. And at Fierce, you know, where our members are really acting in that spirit too. They're saying, you know what, I can't just sit down and watch, or sit back and watch our community fall deeper into crisis. We need to do something about it. And they really do want to be remembered for that.
For many LGBT people, the recent economic crisis reinvigorated the spirit of volunteerism. At Habitat for Humanity's first LGBT Unity Build Day, community members came out in support of affordable housing while raising visibility for the movement.
Today at Habitat for Humanity New York City, we are having something called Unity Build. It's our first ever day of service for the LGBT community in New York City.
The first word that came out of my mouth is when and where.
Here in New York, affordable, decent shelter is a huge issue. So I've supported Habitat for Humanity financially in the past. This is my first day, you know, here on site.
Basically, what Habitat does is, you know, provide homes for people that are affordable, because nowadays when you look at the market, it's really difficult for people to afford homes.
As a requirement to being a first-time homebuyer with Habitat for Humanity, as a down payment, they require you to complete hours called sweat equity. Today we make my 150 hour. I just think that is such a great idea. You appreciate it so much.
Habitat was founded as a Christian faith-based organization, and we remain true to those tenets. We welcome people of all walks of life, all religions to our site. And the LGBT community in New York City is the strongest in the world, and we are proud and happy to bring that community onto our site to help us transform our city for the better.
I thought about this this morning, about the parable of the feeding of the 5,000 in the New Testament, where Jesus is with his disciples and there's a lot of people and they need to eat. Jesus didn't say to them, okay, the straight disciples, what do you have? Okay, the gay disciples, what do you have? He just said, you who are with me, what do you have to share? And he brought their not enough. And when Jesus put it all together, there was more than enough. There was superabundance.
The press is full of gay rights and equality for marriage, and everything I'm seeing in the press is all about what the gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender community wants for ourselves. And I know from my own experience that that's only a part of what we fight for. What we also fight for is other people.
We have a great awareness of being denied basic rights.
My current living conditions are overcrowded. I live in a 2-bedroom with my mother and grandmother. This will also give me an opportunity to finally have my own space.
And so today, as gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgendered, queer, questioning people, New York community members, we come together in this place with our not enough and my not enough and your not enough, and we put it together, and what we create is a home.
It's a great way to actually do something, not just kind of write a check or not just show up at a parade, but actually kind of do something physical that helps people forever.
It's very exciting to come together, work with the people that are actually going to be living in these spaces, and help the sheetrock go up, help cut around those light switches, do whatever we can, because you're not only investing in the future of the planet, you're investing in an individual's future. And when you can see face to face the smile and the way their eyes light up when the room starts taking shape, it's just magical. It makes it all really, really worthwhile.
It allows people that can't really afford to have the American dream, have the American dream.
I would love to see this type of day, like a Unity Build or Pride Day. It's something that could be replicated by Habitat for Humanity chapters across the country.
It's unfortunate, but we have people that are still ignorant as far as the gay community is concerned. Something like the Unity Day Build can show people that we're not just what they might stereotype us as to be. We can do something constructive. We are people that are willing to help others.
It's through these small contributions that we make and increase our visibility that we're able to gain acceptance, approval, and the rights we deserve.
Whether you want to hang sheetrock or you just want to get up and maybe help your neighbor with the yard, just do something. Get out and be a little selfless, be a lot selfless, and in return, your heart will bloom.
Thank you for watching In the Life. To learn more about the issues in tonight's stories and how they affect you, visit our website at inthelifetv.org. You can also watch extended interviews, sign up for monthly airdate alerts, and download past episodes 24/7. Thanks for tuning in, and please join us next month.
In the Life is funded in part by the H. Van Ameringen Foundation, Arcus Foundation, the estate of Richard W. Weiland, and these funders. And by the annual support of In the Life members like you.